So, you're thinking of running for election in either the student officer or NUS conference elections. Well, one of the most important things that you need to do is your manifesto. In this video, we'll take you through 4 steps of writing an impactful manifesto to help your message reach voters efficiently, and some top tips to include. First, what even is a manifesto? The definition of a manifesto is a public declaration of policy and aims, especially one issued before an election by a political party or candidate. Or, put more simply, a document which contains the details of what you would aim to do for students if you are elected. Now we've clarified what a manifesto is, we'll get into the 4 steps you can follow to make your manifesto effective and impactful. Step 1. Gather ideas. Your manifesto should reflect what your motivations are for running in the election, and should also include ideas you have which you would like to implement if you are elected. To help you generate ideas, you can use lots of resources at your disposal. These include reflecting on and use your own experiences as a student as a starting point as to why you want to run for election, and ideas or thoughts you have had which could improve the experiences of people like you. Talk to students about what they think needs changing. Tap into their experiences to get an understanding of why they think this is. Do some research into what issues students have raised this year. You could also contact and speak to the current officer team for some insight. And don't forget to speak to people on your course or who you live with. Some of the people you speak to on the most regular basis could have some really unique thoughts that you could use. Here is an example of some of the important issues students have been talking about on a national scale. Some, if not all, may also apply to Manchester Met students. Race equity. From overt racism and barriers to participation and engagement to prevention of and reporting of racism, decolonising the curriculum, removing the awarding gap, and a progressive anti-racist strategy. What would you do to improve race equity? Mental health. This has been a live discussion for many years. How effective are support measures at the university? How accessible are they? And how do people look after themselves best and as well as they can? Carers and communities. Not all students are young, single, and without dependents. Many are parents or carers of loved ones. Neither does every student move away from their parental home and make new best friends at university. How well do you think university life supports these students, and what could you do to make a difference? Student safety. This could include instances of sexual misconduct, microaggressions, harassment, and drink spiking. How effective do you think institutional and social responses are to these problems, and what action needs to be taken? Placements. Vocational courses require extensive periods on placements in hospitals, schools, and local authorities. How well are these students supported and protected in these environments? Finance. Students can sometimes find themselves in financial difficulty through a number of factors, such as poor wages, rising cost of living, digital poverty, hidden course costs, expensive rents, and a housing shortage. How could these students be supported? Inclusion in student groups. Sport clubs and societies are important to lots of students, but can sometimes be accused of being excluding or expensive. Sport at university has plenty of health and employability benefits, and with the opening of the Sport Institute, there is a heightened awareness of the role sport plays in students' experience. Future career. Most students at Manchester Met state that their future career was the main reason why they wanted to come to university. What would you do to improve how quickly graduates find relevant employment after finishing their university career? The PGR community. This is a community of students that requires an effective voice and that they are properly supported during their time at Manchester Met. Step 2. Decide your priorities. Now that you have all your ideas about what you want to cover in your manifesto, it's time to start deciding your priorities. Some of your ideas, whilst brilliant, might not be realistic. For example, building a giant water slide in the business school sounds like an amazing idea, but it will never happen. Remember, you only have 1,000 words, so use them wisely. Use the feedback and research you have gathered to assess what are going to be your main focuses. Look at what has been the most common themes students have spoken to you about. What trends have you noticed in your research? Select things that are realistic. You need to make sure what you're aiming to achieve for students is actually possible. Also, think back to the reasons you stood in the first place. What things in the feedback and research align with your own motivations and views? Step 3. Get smart. Once you've decided on your priorities, it's time to make them smart. And by smart, we mean election smart. Simple. Are your main priorities clear and easy for voters to understand? Don't use jargon or acronyms that may confuse people. Memorable. Does your manifesto have things in it which students will remember when they come to place their vote? What makes you stand out? Ambitious. Make your manifesto positive and motivate people to want to vote for you. Realistic. Make sure things you want to achieve can be done. Don't promise things you can't deliver. Topical. Are your priorities relevant to students? Will they be able to identify with them? Step 4. Test drive. Now that you have something down on paper, it's time to go out and see what real students think of it. Speak to your friends, classmates, and random students across campus and ask them for their thoughts. This is a key part of the writing process because it will give you some feedback on your ideas and help you to see if you're onto a winner. How much do students agree with what you have set out to achieve? If it doesn't quite hit the mark, you can always go back and change it or include new ideas you've had when test driving it. We'll now look at how manifestos will appear on the ballot paper when students come to vote. We'll show you some bad examples and some top tips on how you can lay out your manifesto to really capture those votes. First, here's a bad example. This is a bad example because the student has used an unclear image. They haven't introduced themselves or what role they're running for, and there is no detail on what it is they would want to achieve if they were elected. Would this person get your vote? Next, we've got an example of someone who's made a good start but hasn't quite finished their manifesto. As you can see, this candidate has uploaded a really clear image and has made a good start in introducing themselves. There are some aims listed, but it lacks detail about how they would go about achieving those aims. Would you vote for them if they had hardly anything to say? And here's a really good example. This is someone who's taken the time to write a detailed and professional looking manifesto. They've used a really clear image, and they've taken the time to introduce themselves, the role that they're running for, and a little bit about them. They've clearly spelled out what their top priorities are and how they would go about achieving them. They've kept it positive. Students and voters will respond to positive messages more than negative ones. If you're running in a candidate team, make sure you include this in your manifesto. And if students want to find out more about your campaign, make sure you add in the link so they can find out where to find out more about you. You can choose to get your message and ideas across in any way that you think best suits your campaign and in a way that will engage students. Here's an example of how you could lay out your manifesto to use during your campaigning to hand out as a flyer or business card. Once you're happy with your final manifesto, you need to make sure you submit it by the deadline of 5 o'clock on Tuesday, the 28th of February. So there you go, our steps to writing a great, interesting and impactful manifesto. Don't forget, if you need help, the elections team are on hand for all candidates from the start of nominations. Just drop us an email on s.u.elections@mmu.ac.uk. You can also find lots of resources online at the Elections Candidate Hub. Good luck and happy manifesto writing!